Hi, this is Steve with Thresher Media Group. Welcome to When You're Ready to Listen. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the truth about God, things you may not have understood, may not have been taught, or quite frankly, had a very hard time believing. And since our entire relationship with God rests on believing, it is important we learn how to separate the truth from the many lies and fictions that abound within the religion of Christianity. So when you're ready to listen, tune in and discover a pathway to freedom, encouragement, life, and hope. A couple of quick reminders. Thresher Media Group is a 501c3 public charity, and we rely entirely on donations from our listeners. If the Spirit leads you, please support this ministry. It's easy to do. Just go to the website, threshermediagroup.com, and click the Donate tab in the header. I'd also encourage you to go to Amazon and pick up a copy of Liberating the Book of Revelation, Returning to the Source of the Message. This book is intended to help us all know what the Spirit said and how He said it. This book is focused not on interpreting the book of Revelation, that is what the podcast is for, but on accurately representing the book of Revelation in the manner in which the Spirit originally spoke it to John. It's available in all formats, hardback, paperback, e-back format, and as an audible. In our last podcast, we studied the 7 heads of the beast, who now are kings and who now are 7 mountains. We discovered that this is addressing spiritual princes, kings of the highest level who have rule and authority over the kingdom of man. These were once all a part of Satan's rule, his strategic counsel, but Satan turned over his power, throne, and great authority to the beast. So these 7 heads are now the central authority within the kingdom of the beast. The codex is clear that 5 of these heads have fallen from their position of prominence amongst mankind. They're no longer worshipped as gods. But now it's time to dive deeper into understanding who those 5 might have been. Episode 144, Revelation 17, verses 10 through 11. The beast's kingdom, Revelation 17, 9 through 13. Here is the mind which is now having wisdom. The 7 heads now are 7 mountains, on which the woman now chooses to sit. And they now are 7 kings. 5 fell, 1 now is, the other has not yet come, and when he may come, he now must remain a little while. The beast which was and now is not, is now himself also an 8th, and now is one of the 7, and he now goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw now are 10 kings, who have now not yet received a kingdom, but they now receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These now have one mind, and they now give their power and authority to the beast. The 5 gods who have fallen. And they now are 7 kings, 5 fell, 1 now is, the other has not yet come, and when he may come, he now must remain a little while. The beast which was and now is not, is now himself also an 8th, and now is one of the 7, and he now goes to destruction. In the Codex, we find that there were 5 very specific spiritual beings, heads, who were worshipped as gods, not just by those who dwell on the earth, but specifically by those who should have worshipped Yahweh alone. The people whom God set apart as his own turned from the exclusive worship of Yahweh, and they served, sacrificed, and worshipped other so-called gods. This is exactly what we have seen and will see happen with the 8th king, who is one of the 7. He now claims to be God, and he is worshipped as God by many in the kingdom of God, those dwelling in the temple, who should, by nature of their covenant with God, worship only Yahweh. Throughout the history of God's people, there were many demonic beings that they worshipped, but the Codex drives our attention to 5 very specific spiritual princes who had a place of notoriety far above the other demonic spirits who pose as gods to be worshipped. 1 Kings chapter 11, 1 through 8. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which Yahweh had said to the sons of Israel, "You shall not associate with them, nor shall they associate with you, for they will surely turn your heart away after their gods." Solomon held fast to those in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to Yahweh his God, as the heart of David his father had been. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and did not follow Yahweh fully, as David his father had done. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, on the mountain, which is east of Jerusalem, literally the Mount of Olives, which is also called the Mount of Destruction, and for Molech, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. Thus also he did for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. During the reign of King Solomon, 4 of these spiritual princes are mentioned: Ashtoreth, Milcom, Chemosh, and Molech. I mean, this is mind-blowing, and it is how we can confirm that the 8th is one of the 7. What the Spirit said was not just a mystery to confuse a mystery, but he was giving us a roadmap to identify the 8th king who is one of the 7. Chemosh, which literally means the destroyer or destruction, is the beast who arises out of the sea of humanity, and he is the angel of the abyss, which was released along with his entourage of demonic locust-like spirits upon the blowing of the 5th trumpet. We were told that his name in Hebrew is Abaddon, destruction, and in Greek, Apollyon, destroyer. Thus, Chemosh, the destroyer, was one of the original 7 and will become the 8th. Oddly, the Mount of Olives, which is also known as the Mount of Destruction, was named after him, and it was where his temple was situated. Chemosh, the destroyer, was one of the spiritual princes worshipped as a god by the people of God. King Solomon set up a temple to Chemosh right adjacent to the temple of Yahweh. This was during the time that he, Chemosh, was. But as we have learned, he crossed some line, and God exiled him and sentenced him, along with his priests and princes, those locust-like demons, to the deep, dark pits of the abyss. Hence, he now is not. But when he is released from the abyss, he will no longer be worshipped as Chemosh. He'll be worshipped as the beast, because this demonic being will be transformed and supercharged when the dragon gives to the beast the dragon's, power, throne, and great authority. And all the spiritual authorities who have been cast down to the world will worship the dragon and the beast, now saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him?" After the beast is supercharged by the dragon, he will be a new creation, so to speak. And instead of ruling territory, historically the land of the Amorites, in his new incarnation, rebirth, or his resurrection, in a very Tammuz-like manner, he will rule over the entire world. Though he was originally one of the 7, in his new creation, he will be an 8th head. The beast which was, and now is not, and is now himself also an 8th, and now is one of the 7. All of this is rendered in the present tense. It speaks of what now is. Let's take a quick look at the other 4 spiritual princes who, along with Chemosh, likely comprised the original 5 who fell from their place of prominence among mankind and are no longer worshipped as gods. Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth has been known by many other names: Isis, Astarte, Aphrodite, Venus, and the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God. The so-called people of Yahweh would present to Ashtoreth meat offerings, drink offerings, and burn incense to her. It is also understood that she was worshipped with various sexual fertility rites due to her connection to Baal, who was a fertility god. Ashtoreth was so important that she even had a city named after her. Not surprisingly, this is a city in which the Rephaim lived, including the famed Og, king of Bashan, one of the ancient giants that was killed as Moses and the Israelites were moving toward the Promised Land. There are many who believe that the Rephaim were the offspring of a union between the sons of God, angelic creatures, and women. All of this is mentioned in Genesis 6:4. Ashtoreth had such a prominent influence in the land of Palestine that when the Philistines slaughtered King Saul, the first king of Israel, they took Saul's weapons and offered them as a tribute in their temple to Ashtoreth. Throughout history, Ashtoreth was always associated with a male counterpart. For instance, she was intimately connected with the worship of Baal. We are told in no uncertain terms that the people of Israel forsook Yahweh and served Baal and Ashtoreth. Her reach, however, went beyond Israel. In Egypt, the pairing was Isis and Horus. In Greece, Aphrodite and Eros. In Italy, Venus and Cupid. And eventually in Rome and throughout the world, Mary, the Queen of Heaven, and her son Jesus. And even today, we still see her long arm of influence on the millions who worship or venerate Mary, the mother of Jesus. Next, we have Milcom, who was the abomination of the Ammonites. Because of his love for his foreign wives, Solomon went after Milcom and worshipped him as a god. In the Codex, we read about David attacking the Ammonites and taking from their king a crown with a precious stone in it. However, this was probably a reference not to a man, but to a manly statue of this god Milcom, who was their king. The golden crown weighed 1 talent, and if we convert talents to pounds, this crown would have weighed approximately 75 pounds, a weight that is more fitting for a manly statue of a god than for a man. Like Chemosh, Milcom was also exiled, together with his priests and princes, presumably to some part of the abyss or to some desert or spiritual wilderness where bad demons are banished. We simply do not know what exile looked like for Milcom, but we can be pretty sure that just like the beast in the abyss, he has found a way to still influence this world with his particular style of spiritual corruption. The Ammonites had more than one deity. In addition to the abomination of Milcom, they also worshipped Molech, who is famous for requiring his worshippers to sacrifice their babies in the fire as a holy offering to him. It is more than likely that this detestable spirit is functioning strong in our day and age, and it's the reason why so many babies are aborted throughout the world. Unbeknownst to the masses, people are still offering sacrifices to Molech. As far as the fifth who fell from its prominence before mankind, the Jews unabashedly worshipped a demon called Baal. The word Baal, or Baal, is Semitic for owner, master, or husband. He was believed to be the god of fertility, and specifically, he was responsible for the blessing of rain. In blatant and unabashed apostasy, the people of God looked to Baal to be their provider of life itself, as the region was utterly dependent upon rain for its existence. In times of drought, to activate the rain, worshippers prayed, mourned, self-lacerated, danced, and poured out water. Like Molech, Baal also demanded a sacrifice of a firstborn male child to earn his favor. We read about Baal worship in our study in Jude. King Balak of Moab, with whom the prophet Balaam helped corrupt the Israelites, was a worshiper of Baal, and he is responsible for introducing Baal to the people of God. We are told that the Israelites literally joined themselves, or in the Hebrew, bound themselves in covenant to Baal. They were the covenant people of Yahweh, but they had rejected that precious covenant and instead forged a new covenant to the spirit prince who went by the name of Baal. Instead of Yahweh, Baal became their owner, master, and husband. We might question whether Baal is still influencing our world through the various environmental movements of our day, as people seem to seek to do whatever they deem necessary to find the favor and blessing of Mother Earth, much like the Israelites of old. One is the sixth. One now is. The sixth of these angelic rulers or kings is. This is rendered in the present active indicative and not as a participle. Therefore, we are not to understand this one as having an ongoing platform of power and authority. Rather, this is a clear statement of fact of what was then, at the time of the revelation, a present reality. Thus, unlike the 5 kings who fell, Chemosh, Ashtoreth, Milcom, Molech, and Baal, and who have lost their place of glorification and worship amongst mankind, perhaps the 6th head is the central deity that at the time of the revelation was worshipped as God. And we have no reason to believe that he has fell. If you remember from our study in Revelation 13 about the icon or the statue that is given life or breath and speaks, we learned that from the time of Antiochus IV, a king of the Seleucid Empire from the area of modern-day Syria, who ruled from 175 to 164 BC, who is himself a type of the man we call the Antichrist, through and during the time of the Revelation, the chief supreme god amongst the pantheon of gods was Zeus, who was known in the Roman world as Jupiter Olympus. You might be thinking, hey, that might fit the typology about worship, but historically, the people of God did not worship Zeus/Jupiter, or did they? We learned that in the great pantheon at Rome, there was a statute of the image of Zeus/Jupiter, where people would gather to worship. Eventually, with the Christianization of Rome, the pantheon was converted into a church in 125 AD and dedicated to the Virgin Mary, of course. Ashtoreth still has a long, corrupting arm. Today, the statues of all the gods in the pantheon are found in the Vatican Museum, except for one statue of great importance, the great statue of Zeus/Jupiter, which has been modified into the form of Saint Peter, retitled and seated on a throne in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Though modified, the statue continues to have the sun disk over its head, which was a symbol of the sun god, Zeus/Jupiter. It was left in place and now serves as Peter's halo. Thousands of people touch and kiss the foot of Zeus/Jupiter while offering up prayer and asking for blessings from Saint Peter. It is sad, but those praying homage have nearly worn away the toes of the statue through their idolatrous worship. How intense and disturbing is that? This statue is believed to be the oldest, quote, Christian statue. The irony is beyond imagination. And just to keep all of this in the context of worship, in the Greek, the word we have in the Codex that is translated as worship literally means to kiss towards. People all throughout Christendom are literally kissing towards and worshiping Zeus/Jupiter. The sixth king who now is just might be none other than Zeus/Jupiter, who has maintained a significant, though diminished platform of manifestation to humanity. Yet to come, the seventh. The other has not yet come, and when he may come, he now must remain a little while. This communicates that at the time of the revelation, the seventh prince had not yet arrived on the scene. This angelic being exists, but had yet to acquire his kingdom and place of authority on this earth, where he will manifest himself as God. It is interesting that the Spirit used the subjunctive mood, when he may come, and not the indicative mood, when he comes. The subjunctive indicates that this event is contingent, probable, or eventual. This is odd because the statement is not presented as a possibility, but a certainty, because later the Spirit references the eighth king. Can't have an eighth without a seventh. So perhaps the Spirit was emphasizing the eventuality of the coming of the seventh king and not the probability. This let John know that the coming of the seventh king would be way down the road, not something that John should expect in his lifetime. And when he may come, he now must remain a little while. After his coronation, so to speak, this ruler, this seventh king, will not occupy this place of leadership for very long. This seems to indicate that when he does obtain his authority, and when mankind begins to worship this king, it will be close to the time of the end. And being rendered in the present tense, it's even now a reality with no contingency. He will remain a little while. His time has been fixed. Now, this is an assumption, but the only spiritual king that has emerged on the scene of humanity since the time of Zeus/Jupiter, and who has manifested himself amongst humanity as God, such that he is demanded to be worshipped as God, and in beast-like fashion is willing to kill anyone who does not worship him as such, is the God Allah. He was introduced to the world in the 7th century by the Prophet Muhammad, and it is a faith that is still spreading rapidly in our modern world. It is estimated that today, 24% of the world's population are dedicated to Allah. The rapid growth of Islam has occurred in much of what was once Christian lands. The Middle East and the entire eastern arm of the Roman Empire were at one time Christian. But in the 12th through the 14th centuries, many countries that once professed faith in Jesus Christ converted to Islam and now worship Allah, as do many provinces or regions of Europe that were once a part of what was known as the Western Christianized Roman Empire, fitting the typology of worship that was established for us by the 5 kings who fell. And when he may come, he now must remain a little while. The presence and prominence of this 7th king is a clear indicator that the time of the end is near. And this, the 7th king's end, is also near. This spiritual king will either give his allegiance to the beast or he will be removed, giving way for the 8th, who now is one of the 7. The 8th who goes to destruction. The beast which was, and now is not, is now himself also an 8th, and now is one of the 7, and he now goes to destruction. It is not a coincidence that the beast is the 8th king. According to the code, 8 is the number of new beginnings, the number of the Messiah, the one who makes all things new. The beast takes on this number consistent with how he presents himself to the world as their promised Messiah, albeit a false, blasphemous Messiah. As stated previously, this definition of the beast which was and now is not ties directly to Revelation 17 verse 8, which says, "The beast that you saw was, and now is not, and now is now about to now come up out of the abyss, and now go to destruction." Combined, both passages tie us to the destroyer, the spirit that is interned in the abyss, and it ties us to Revelation 9, 1 through 11, where we are shown the scene where the angel is released from the abyss at the blowing of the 5th trumpet. The beast once had dominion and rule even in the unseen realms and upon the earth, but now he does not. He will one day be released from the abyss and take up rule in an entirely new way. No longer will he be known as Chemosh, one of the 7. Now, he will be the beast, the 8th king, supercharged by the great power, throne, and authority that is granted to him by Satan. Thus, instead of ruling a territory, the land of the Amorites, in his new incarnation, rebirth, or Tammuz-like resurrection, he will rule over the entire world. And all who are now dwelling on the earth will worship him now, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to now be caused to wage war with him?" He is an 8th who is also now one of the 7. And he now goes to destruction. At some point after his release from the abyss, he will possess the man we call the Antichrist. In the Codex, it is phrased as follows: "There was cause to be given to him," the beast, "a mouth, now speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was caused to be given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who are now dwelling in heaven." This is the only time Revelation refers to the man instead of to the demonic spirit. In the book of Daniel, we're also told that this man, who is possessed by the beast, will do as he pleases, and he will prosper until the indignation, or until the Lord's wrath is completed. For that which is decreed will be done. And what has been decreed? A complete destruction. One that is decreed will be poured out on the one who makes desolate or causes horror. In a clever wordplay on the name of the beast, into destruction the destroyer now goes, just as Daniel prophesied. On the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. The beast, the destroyer, will wreak massive destruction on the people of God and on the inhabitants of the earth, slaughtering without hesitation those who will not worship him. But he too is marked for complete destruction. His very name speaks of his destiny, destruction for one who destroys. And this time it will not be a butchering and then internment in the abyss. Rather, the beast will be tossed into the lake of fire for complete destruction. The Codex predicts this endgame. The beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. And since "and he now goes to destruction" is rendered in the present tense, this is even now his destiny. There is no escaping it. The destroyer is now doomed to destruction. Well, let's stop here, and in our next podcast, we'll pick up with a study on the 10 horns of the beast. I'm glad you've tuned in and have been ready to listen. To get a free download of the full written transcript with all the scripture references footnoted, please go to threshermediagroup.com. That is THRESHER mediagroup.com. This is Steve with Thresher Media Group. When you're ready to listen, tune in.